Hello and welcome to CEP Live on Facebook, Wealth Policy, Civic Engagement, and You. We're here today with Don Buehler, the Kansas River Keeper with Friends of the Kaw. Thanks for joining us, Don.
Thank you.
And today, if like we always do, we'll give you some updates on wealth policy issues, especially as they relate to water, since that's Don's specialty. We'll talk about civic engagement opportunities and ways that you can better connect with the Kansas legislature. All of these videos are in preparation for our annual Wealth Day of Advocacy and Education at the Capitol. Wealth Day this year is on March 12th, which is a week from today. So get your RSVPs in and get yourselves down to the Capitol to advocate and educate on water, energy, air, land, transportation, and health. Don, can you tell our audience a little bit about Friends of the Kaw and your role as the River Keeper?
Sure. So Friends of the Kaw is a nonprofit dedicated to protecting and preserving the 173-mile-long Kansas River. The river starts in Junction City. It runs 173 miles to Kaw Point in Kansas City, where it meets the Missouri River. It's about a 61,000 square mile watershed, so that includes almost the entire upper half of Kansas, parts of eastern Colorado and central Nebraska. So the work that we do to protect the Kansas River includes we educate K-12 students and adults on impacts to the Kansas River. We educate through our community paddle program, where we take groups out on the Kansas River and teach them about it, let them experience it, see what it's like to be on the Kansas River. That's probably what we're most known for. We also mediate suspected pollution and work with agencies to take care of the pollution issues on the Kansas River. And we also work with communities on the Kansas River Trail, developing Kansas riverfront opportunities for the people of the state of Kansas. So with all of that, I am the Executive Director and Kansas River Keeper for Friends of the Kaw. And as the Kansas River Keeper, I am the voice, the ears, the eyes of the Kansas River and represent the river in community discussions.
And thank you for doing that. It's very important work done.
Thank you.
So Friends of the Kaw is also a wealth partner. We have a partnership where we bring together organizations who work on the wealth issues to really collaboratively come up with ways to make progress on these issues in Kansas. Don, can you talk to us a little bit about how your work connects with wealth?
So I feel like wealth really encompasses everything that we do. I mean, it touches every aspect of it, because the Kansas River is part of a watershed, and a watershed is where all the area drains to a single point. In our case, it's the Kansas River. And within that watershed, we have all of the aspects of wealth, water, obviously, right? And then the other points of the wealth program. So we feel like it really touches everything that the river touches.
Fantastic. And I forgot to have you tell everybody how they can get a hold of your organization. How can people connect with Friends of the Kaw?
Great. So there are lots of ways to connect. You can become a member, first of all, and support our work. Oftentimes we're asked how many people we have standing behind us when we're advocating on behalf of the Kansas River. So becoming a member is a really important way to help us in our work to advocate. You can also find information on our website, kansasriver.org. There's a lot of information on there. Also, you'll find our calendar, which has all of our community events and paddle trips coming up. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you just search for Friends of the Kaw, you'll find us. And you can also sign up for our newsletter on our website. You also, lastly, most importantly, you can sign up to be a volunteer. We have a huge volunteer base that helps us with a lot of different projects, but you could sign up to become a volunteer with Friends of the Kaw.
Fantastic. And if you're watching this because you've heard how cool Don is and you're wondering who in the world I am, I'm with the Climate and Energy Project. It's climateenergy.org. We also have a website and a newsletter you can sign up for to get up to speed on all of the pressing energy issues. We are also on Facebook at CEP Heartland and Twitter. And we're on Instagram, but I don't have one of the fancy things for our Instagram. So check us out. Lots of good things. So Don, can you talk a little bit about the pressing wealth policy priorities that you're dealing with right now?
Right, absolutely. So the most important issue facing water in Kansas is funding. So we all know that water has been said in many circles to be the next Great War, and we have a lot of issues that we're facing across the state, not just here in eastern Kansas. And for years we've been pushing water to the back burner. We need to move this to the front of the discussion. Some of the top issues facing our state, for example, are harmful algal blooms. We have harmful algal blooms in many of our reservoirs across the state. Probably the most notorious one is Milford Reservoir, which is in the Kansas River watershed. There are lots of opportunities for us to implement programs that can help reduce the duration and frequency of those harmful algal blooms. But of course we need funding for that, so that's all included in the Kansas State Water Plan Fund. There's also sedimentation of our reservoirs. Our reservoirs are filling in with sediment faster than they ever have, and Tuttle Creek is a primary example of that. If you look at images from back when the reservoir was built, the water would go all the way up into the upper ends of the reservoir and into the stream ahead, and now you'll see that it's silted in all the way down to the reservoir. So there's a lot of issues with that. It's a workhorse of the Kansas River. It drains a huge part of the watershed, and we're going to have to find some ways to solve those problems. So funding again for sedimentation issues. There's also high nutrients in our water. The Kansas River is impaired for phosphorus for the entire length of the river, and E. coli for much of its length. And so there are lots of programs also that we can implement, conservation programs to slow down sediment, because sediment carries with it the nutrients that are getting into our water supply. So if we can do buffers and filters and stream bank stabilization projects, that we can improve water quality and keep those nutrients out of the water supply. Water quantity. I know that many of us saw last summer that we had a drought, especially in this eastern part of the state. I live in an area that was a part of the drought, and then in the fall we had the extreme opposite. So we went all summer with a really low Kansas River. There was flooding on the Missouri River at the same time that Kansas was experiencing a drought. And then on top of that, in the fall, we got the rains, and the Kansas River was so high all winter long that it is just now, in March, finally starting to drop. All of that leads us to climate change, another big issue for us in the state of Kansas, and we see it impact us regularly on the river. We also have declining aquifers out in western Kansas. So all of those things, we've put together action plans. The Kansas Water Office has goals and put in action plans for the water plan funding, but we need to fund the water plan. So I'll go on into that. So I took a breather, Rachel.
While you're taking a breather, I will tell everybody, if you're thinking, wow, Donna's giving you some really amazing information here and you might have questions for her, please feel free to add your questions in the comments, and the wonderful Leilani Gray, who's running tech behind the camera for us, she'll let us know you've got a question, and we'll run it by Dawn. And now I will let Dawn talk to you about the water plan.
Sure, I'd love to. So obviously this is a very important topic to us, funding the water plan, and I could talk about it all day, so I do wanted to make sure I wasn't over talking on my time limit. But the governor's water vision is a plan that was put together at the state level to address some of these water issues of our state, and the governor had put together a blue ribbon task force on funding, and they came to the consensus that roughly $55 million in annual funding is needed for full implementation of the vision. And the task force had recommended a 0.1% sales tax revenue to be dedicated. That did not have any traction in the legislature. This has been over the last couple of years. However, the legislature has a statutory requirement to transfer $6 million from the state general fund and $2 million from the economic development fund into the Kansas State Water Plan. That has not happened in quite some time. Now, in the last 2 years, we received some funding. So there was about $1.5 million 2 years ago, and last year there were, I think, was around $3 million that was transferred. But statutorily, there was supposed to be $8 million a year that's transferred into that fund to be used for water issues, and that has not been occurring. In fact, there's been about $75 million total that has not been transferred into the water plan fund over time. And so we're behind. We are behind on a lot of these water issues, and we need to start making this a priority in our state. So what we advocate for and ask is that you talk to your legislator and tell them how important water is to everything that we do. It touches everything from how we use it in our homes to drinking water, to our animals and our agriculture and our energy and everything that we do. Water touches it. Not to mention the water that we need for plants and animals and aquatic species, which is an area that often gets neglected. So we have a lot of work to do, but the first step is to request that we get the full $8 million into the water plan fund.
And just as a reminder, you can come to engage with your legislators at our annual Wealth Day of Advocacy and Education in exactly 1 week. And Dawn will be there, as well as several other really amazing organizations. There's still a little bit of room for sponsors if you're listening to this and thinking that you might like to have your organization showcased in the rotunda. But also, if you're just a regular person watching this and thinking, man, I didn't realize what was going on with the water plan, what can I do? So Dawn, what are some of your top tips for civic engagement?
Great. So I think some of my top tips, my personal ones, are that, to do your research, know what's already being done so that we can talk to our legislators about things that we already know are in the pipe and help them understand that these things are ready to be implemented and they're really great projects for our state, but we need funding. Talk to your legislators because they really do want to hear from you. That's something that I've learned over the course of the last few years, is that they really are interested in what we have to say. They want to hear from us, and the more that they hear from us, the more that water will be a priority. When I bring this up in some circles, I'll hear folks say, well, no one's talking about water. And until they start talking about water at a grassroots level, this isn't going to become a priority. So we need to make it a priority. So all of us at the grassroots level, we have to start talking about it more. And then I do want to point out that, just one comment can make a huge impact. I've often seen where I've worked on advocacy issues at the community level, and there might be only 2 or 3 public comments, but those 2 or 3 public comments can have a huge impact on how decisions are being made. So make sure that you put make your comment, get your comment put in. And the last thing is be respectful and courteous. Our legislators work long hours too, and they are trying to weigh all of the different priorities.
Thank you for all of that, Dawn. One of the things that we hope when we host this Wealth Day of Advocacy and Education, and also the idea behind hosting these CEP live interviews featuring our partners, is really to get people better engaged and better informed so that they can use their voice more effectively at the legislature or even in your local city, or county commission hearings, what have you. And one of the things that we hear a lot from people is, I'm just so nervous. I don't know what to say to a legislator. They're these scary, important people, and I'm just, some regular person walking in. And so, Dawn, I'd like to ask you, what would you encourage people to ask their legislators if water is one of their priorities?
Sure. I think we can break it down very simply and say, to our legislator, water is important to me, it's important to my community, and I ask that you fully fund the State Water Plan Fund so that we can at least be taking care of the issues that are in front of us.
That's short and sweet.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Another thing that we have been really engaged with the Climate Energy Project and also Friends of the Caw is voter engagement. How to get people, again, more engaged on these water, energy, air, land, transportation, and health, our Kansas wealth resources. How do we get people really speaking up and taking action on these issues? And so last year, we really focused on voter registration, and we ended up having a record turnout of people voting, which was fantastic. But a lot of times what happens is people think, oh, there's an election, I need to vote, and then they don't do anything until the next election. And so, Dawn, what would you do to encourage people, ways to stay involved beyond the legislative session or voting cycles?
So there's a few things that we can do. One is that to stay engaged with organizations such as ours or the Climate and Energy Project. These nonprofit organizations are working really hard to stay on top of these issues. So first I would find, a way to sign up for newsletters, follow them on social media sites and stay engaged. One of the things that we do is we're a sponsor of the Kansas Rural Center's Policy Watch. And that is a really, really great resource. And as a member of Friends of the Caw, we share that with you. You can also look up Kansas Rural Center. They have a website and Facebook, but they do a really great policy watch that helps us stay on top of issues. So I encourage you to follow their program. And also, I encourage you to come to Wealth Day. This year we've got let's see, I've got about 6 people that are going to come along with Friends of the Caw who've never been before. So they're interested in learning about all different kinds of topics. And frankly, a couple of them that are coming with me are people that I know personally, and they're coming for reasons that include water, but frankly, they have an interest in other things like health or transportation. And so they're going to come to Wealth Day with us and participate in that and go with a mentor and talk to a legislator. So it's a great opportunity to learn about that.
Yeah, thank you again for the plug for Wealth Day. It's really a fantastic opportunity to engage with great organizations like Friends of the Caw and Climate and Energy Project, and the Rural Center will be there, as well as I think close to 30 other organizations right now. But it's also a fun time to meet other like-minded people, to go to the Rotunda and you might connect with one of these people that Dawn is bringing along with her and find that you have something in common, and maybe even find ways that you could work together to really amplify your voices. And plus, of course, you get to meet with your legislators. Wealth Day this year will feature an advocate training and policy briefing, and it will actually start with a climate vigil, and then we'll have the advocacy briefing, and then we have organizations throughout the Rotunda that you can engage with all day. And we'll host what we call wealth dialogues throughout the day, which are 30-minute kind of intensive opportunities to connect with a legislator and an advocate, representative of an advocacy organization. We'll end with some really sweet cookies and conversation around conservation. And finally, we'll have a solar rally at the end of the day. It's a really fantastic event, and I can't think of a better way to spend a Tuesday. I will say, though, that there are lots of opportunities for engagement if you have to work on Wealth Day or you can't make it for another reason. Dawn, what are some opportunities that people could engage in with Friends of the Caw?
So we have a lot going on, I'm happy to say. So you can check out our website calendar. We've got lots of river trips for those of you that are watching today or are interested in getting out on the river and learning more about that. They're all posted on our calendar, and they'll be shared on our social media sites. We also have a big cleanup coming up in April that we're partnering with the Nature Conservancy to do a really, really big all-day river cleanup. So we hope that you'll be a part of that in April as well. And then we have our riverbank restoration project that has multiple partners that we're working on. We have already 6 work days scheduled coming up. So all of those things are on our website, on our calendar, and they'll be shared on our social media sites. The one thing that I really do want to make sure I bring to everyone's attention today is that the EPA and the Corps of Engineers came out with the new Waters of the U.S. rule as part of the Clean Water Act. So if you hear people say WOTUS, W-O-T-U-S, that is an acronym for Waters of the U.S. And there's a lot of WOTUS talk going around right now. So last week was the EPA hearing where anyone who wanted to had an opportunity to go and speak in front of the EPA and give them some feedback on this water rule. And so I went along with some other river keepers from the region and lots of other public folks. I saw people that had retired and people that were just coming into their career, so it was a whole range of folks. But they're going to have this public comment period open for until April 15th for written public comment. So I encourage you to make your voice heard and put in your public comment on this water rule. We'll be sharing information in our newsletter and on all of our sites about how you can make comment on this rule. So just stay engaged and follow us so that you can find out more about how that's going to impact the Kansas River.
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and thank you for all the work you're doing on that, Dawn. Okay. Another way you can use your voice is by asking a question in the comment box. Do we have any questions, Leilani?
We have a few.
Oh, a few questions. Great.
Dorothy is asking who is currently in charge of the water office.
So the water office, the top person is Earl Lewis. He is at the top of the water office right now. He's the acting director.
And won't Earl Lewis be presenting at Wealth Day in one of the dialogues?
We think so. We are very hopeful that he'll be able to join us for a water discussion along with a couple of, maybe a legislator to talk about water funding and about how we can perhaps raise the amount of money that's approved for water funding this year.
Fantastic. Do we have another question, Leilani?
Yes. Dave Wilson asks, are there other river keepers in Kansas, such as the Ark River?
There are currently no other river keepers in Kansas. The Ark River is a national water trail, however, just like the Kansas River is. The Kansas River was the second national water trail in the nation, and the Ark was named year before last. But there are no others currently in Kansas. But that doesn't mean we're not working on it. I would love to have a river keeper to help me in this state. But there is one in St. Louis on the Missouri River. There's one in Arkansas on the White River, and there's one on the Grand in Oklahoma. Those are the three closest.
I still think that's the coolest job title I've ever heard, too, river keeper. I mean, what more can you really ask for? Do we have another question?
There was also a book recommendation or a book that someone had thought maybe you had known about. It's called Water 4.0. The author here is, I believe, I'm not sure, I can't find the author. I'll post it. I'll post the book.
Great.
But
Thank
Dave Wilson
you.
had mentioned and asked if you had heard of that.
Great.
Water 4.0?
Water 4.0. Let's go.
And I will comment too, if you're watching this, as we know a lot of times people don't watch the live stream, but they might catch it later tonight while they're cooking dinner or relaxing after work. And if you're thinking, darn, I wish I would have watched that so I could ask on a question, you still can. You can put your comment in the comment box and we'll follow up with Dawn, and she's always happy to answer any questions you have about water issues. Again, we encourage you to sign up and join us for Wealth Day on March 12th, 1 week from today. And also, if you're thinking that you wish you had a little bit more, confidence, or you could improve your leadership skills a little bit more, the Climate and Energy Project has partnered with the Kansas Leadership Center on a transformation grant. So we're able to send 40 Kansans to get free training from the Leadership Center. So develop your leadership skills, get involved in an environmental organization, use your voice, donate to support our work, anything you can do to help preserve our wealth resources. Any final thoughts you have today, Dawn?
I've been to KLC with the Climate Energy Project. So thank you for that opportunity. So if you have an opportunity to do that, I highly suggest it. And thank you all for supporting our work for the Kansas River. We genuinely appreciate it.
And as always, thanks for helping us preserve our Kansas wealth resources and leading the way to a clean energy future.